And if you look closely at the crash, you'll see that ESP points to the end of our buffer. And unfortunately for us, this is the only buffer space we have to work with in order to start a chain of code execution. So as we can see, this will not be an exploit-friendly vulnerability. None of our registers point to our user-controlled input, except for ESP, which points us to an 11-byte buffer. We'll have to be very creative in order to squeeze out of that corner. Let's start by redirecting the execution flow to a jump or call ESP instruction, which will lead us to this small minimal buffer. After a bit of searching, such an address can be found in in_mp3.dll. So let's look at all the executable modules that are loaded and go to our specific DLL and look for a call or jump ESP instruction inside this DLL. Wonderful. So we find such an instruction at this address. Let's copy over this address to our exploit. And fix our return address. We'll regenerate the playlist file. And once again attach Ollie and examine the crash. We won't forget to put a breakpoint at our core ESP address so that we can follow the crash in greater detail. Sometimes we have to enter the address twice in Ollie in order to get to the right place. And an F2 places a breakpoint. We'll now open the file once again. And wonderful. We've hit our breakpoint in our core ESP. We can see that here. And let's just see where this will lead us to. We'll follow in dump to see the memory space that ESP is pointing to. And you can see that once again we've hit our 11-byte buffer. So now that we see that we can control the execution flow, we need to figure out how to get out of that tight 11-byte buffer space. If we take a closer look at the memory layout once the crash has occurred, we'll see that we've got a large amount of space just before we manage to overwrite our EIP. So if we were to give the following instructions once we hit ESP, and let's edit this directly in Ollie. We'll take the jump by pressing F8, and this is our 11-byte shellcode. So let's put some instructions which will make up our first stage shellcode at this point. We'll subtract around 176 bytes from ESP, which should take us back into our buffer. And then we'll jump to that location. So these instructions will essentially be our first stage shellcode, which will lead us into a less size restrictive place. So let's take this jump. We'll copy this, as this will once again be used in our exploit as our first stage shellcode. So I'll copy this to clipboard. and let's see where we get redirected to. So once again, ESP points to more or less the end of our buffer space. And what we would like to do is jump around 176 bytes back into the buffer, which should probably take us around here. And then we will have all of this space to execute a second stage payload. So let's see if this works. We'll subtract ESP. We'll do it again. Let's see where ESP points to now. So right click, follow and dump, and look at that. ESP is now pointing to exactly this address. If we take the jump, we should be met by a few NOPs and then some breakpoints. So let's take that jump, F8, and look at that. So effectively, our first stage shellcode has given us a 176 byte jump back into our buffer, and we now have a bit more space to execute code.